Liberia. My name is Dennis Jai, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. Today is part 2 of our series in auditing. Last week we started, and this is part 2. My guest, Mrs. Chyrl Wreh, joining us from New Jersey. Chyrl, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you. Thank you.
Joining us from Minneapolis, Mr. Alexander Cuffy. Welcome to Focus on Liberia, Alex.
Thank you, Dennis.
All right, we're going to start with a brief review from last week, but let me welcome all our viewers from across the globe. Welcome to FOL Marketplace. This is the place we discuss business, economics, and finance issues. And it happens every week at 3 p.m. on Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern, that is. So let's jump straight into it. We are discussing auditing. Last week, we started with the definition, the categories, and try to even look at, how it is done in Liberia. So I want to give you, as part of your introductory statement, to just do a brief overview of what we covered last week before we get into today's topic. Let me start with you, Alex.
Yeah, basically, thank you, Dennis. Again, hello to our viewers who listened to us last week and are listening to us now, and to the new viewers as well. And thanks to Focus on Liberia for having us. Last week, we basically went over the definition of auditing. We also talk about the different classification, the different type of auditing. And we delve into tax auditing. We talk about the traditional auditing from the private sector and the public sector. We talk about the differences between external audit and internal audit. And then we delve into a little bit about the Liberian audit process. That's what we discussed the last time, in summary.
Thank you. Let me bring in Chyrl to just briefly go over the importance of auditing. And she's coming from the government audit background, where she was involved in sales tax. And sales tax audit is so important because almost all of us can relate to that. So I want Chyrl to go a little bit over the importance of doing an audit and talk a little bit about why her background in sales tax auditing is very important to the discussion we're having. Chyrl.
Thank you, Dennis. Well, audit is really important because as opposed to what people tend to think that is mainly a gotcha, it's really to ensure that businesses are fulfilling their obligations as well as individuals. Like Dennis rightly said, sales tax is very important. And it's funny that you talk about that, Dennis, because I read one of the comments and I was a little taken aback. And the poster indicated that sales tax is pretty much on the bottom rung of the ladder. But what I want to bring to your attention is that you have individuals who, for one reason or the other, may not pay income tax because they're pretty much not earning a lot of money, as opposed to another individual who's earning a lot of money. So as a result, he may not have to pay income tax. But sales tax is universal, and it relates to individual states. So if your state has sales tax, it doesn't matter whether you are a millionaire or someone who earns not much money. If, for example, either one of you went to Walmart and purchased a 50-screen TV worth the same amount of money in that state, you will be paying the exact same amount of sales tax. So sales tax is really important. And the amount of money that's being generated by sales tax go towards the budget of the state, and which results into different kinds of services that's being provided by the state. So again, sales tax is really important. And just a point of correction, when I talk about being, having experience in sales tax, I was really talking more so from the Cuffy standpoint, which we delve into that today. As an auditor, I did audit corporation business tax, employers withholding tax, and all the various taxes that the business that I was auditing was eligible for, just to make that point of correction. But as it relates to the Cuffy portion of it, which is the hearings portion, that's when I segue into sales tax, and that became my specialty. So yes, it's really important when it comes to the taxes that's generated by the government, because services are provided by that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, again, welcome to Focus on Liberia. We are discussing auditing, and today we cannot discuss auditing without talking about Liberia and what's happening in Liberia. Especially, there was something people call the leaked audit report. So I'm going to use that as a case study as we discuss audit later on during the show. Let me come to you, Alex, for what happened if an entity is not audited? We talk about the importance of audit. I want us to start from there. We audit is very broad. Different kinds of entities are audited. What happened? What's the downside if entities are not audited?
Well, because we're looking at it from the public sector, meaning the government angle, and because the private sector, whether it's private companies or publicly traded companies, because it's legal. If a company, for example, a private company is not audited, they breach the law. They have to be audited at least once a year. If you're a publicly traded company, that's requirement by the people that govern the exchange, the security exchange. Say, for example, in America, the Security and Exchange Commission required that. Sarbanes-Oxley required that. So if you do not submit your audit report, there are different reporting structures that are required to be a publicly traded company. At the end of the day, at the end of the year, you got to submit your audit report, you got to submit your 10K, you got to submit different types of report, even the report. So it's illegal not to do that. So you can be punished or you can be denied. On the private side, for example, if you want monies, you want loans from banks, you can get it with and so you don't typically, you're absent from a committee of companies. On the public side, government side, you're required to be audited. If you're not, if you refuse to be audited, if the auditing commission commission an audit, if you refuse to be audited, you can be reported to the legislature or you can be reported to the president. And the repercussion is that you could be fired from your position or you could be denied government funding. Government funding could be suspended to your entity. So there are consequences. On the tax side, if you your tax returns, either corporate tax return or individual tax return is flagged for auditing, it's by law. The IRS can come after you. So there's consequences.
Right. Then on the private side, even nonprofit, I believe, if you want tax dollars or so Chyrl, talk a little bit about the private side, even down to our own Liberian not-for-profit organization. If you are not audited, what happens?
Well, you talk about the public side. You mean the public side, though, because I'm more with the public as opposed to private.
Okay, yeah.
Now, say, for example, if you were flagged, like Alex rightly said, if you were flagged for audit, and I gave reasons why businesses were audited. We have a whole sector of audit team that decided which company is audited and which isn't. So if you refuse to be audited, or say, for example, if you did not give us documents, what we had option of either filing what we call an arbitrary assessment or an estimated assessment. An estimated assessment would be a situation where we do have documents like that you have filed tax returns, and we can use that to estimate an audit assessment. Alternatively, if you did not file any tax returns, we can come up with an arbitrary amount and say we assess you that amount. Now, if in the event, and we'll talk about that later on, where you have you could file a protest. If you did not file a protest and even went on to tax court and you just had those assessments sitting there, the investigator, which I used to be an investigator, we can then come in and levy your bank account. Not only levy your bank account, we can also come in and shut down your business. So like Alex rightly said, there are consequences for not submitting yourself to an audit. So those can be the extreme. We can shut down your business, take everything you have. So as it relates to nonprofit organization, again, nonprofit organization, I did do one of those at one point in time, but I believe if you were looking for funding and you were not audited, that could be one of the consequences that you would have. You wouldn't pretty much get the funding that you're requiring. And when you're a nonprofit organization, you pretty much depend on philanthropists as well as maybe grants to run your organization. So yes, if you did not submit to an audit, it would probably hinder you getting the source of funding that you need to run that nonprofit organization. And you could possibly lose your nonprofit status, your 501c3 status. That could probably be the extreme.
So I can give an example to that. I audited an international nonprofit in the U.S. We're providing funding to different locations, including in Africa. So we go into the entity, and they had not even prepared their financial statements. So that alone can go to the funder, and the agency, the international agency, can stop funding from you. So in that case, we could not start the audit because the financial statements and other records were not available, were not prepared. And we moved back to the office and reported to the head office that these guys are not ready. And the head office sent them a strongly worded letter that funding will be stopped if the audit does not go on. So there can be consequences.
Good. Now let's talk about conflict of interest. When our auditors challenged by that, Alex, I remember from our previous show, there was a question there, a comment that, so let's talk about conflict of interest when it comes to auditors. And from your experience in Liberia, someone asked, how can Alex be paid by the government and audit the government? So in that case, so tell me if that presents a conflict of interest.
Well, that in itself is not a conflict of interest, because you have, for example, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, you have the Department of Justice, you have people who investigate cases. So the FBI officials are paid by the government of the United States of America. So you can say because the guy is paid by the government of the United States of America, so he cannot perform an impartial investigation, even on a government official. You see in America, for example, during these elections, things are happening. Of course, people have been fired for standing up. For example, the guy who just said that the election was the most safest election. So he works for the government. He works for the president. He works at the will and pleasure of the president. The president can fire him if he stands by his. So yes, I worked in the government Liberia. And the fact that government Liberia paid my salary did not preclude me from doing what I had to do. It doesn't create a conflict of interest. So if it created a conflict of interest, then the internal auditors that work with 1,500 companies around the world or other places, even the tax auditors that government pay their taxes, they won't request documents from high-level government officials and things like that. So it does not create a conflict of interest because you were paid by the institution. No. There is something, can be conflict of interest if, for example, say, one of the things, I have a clear example when I did some investigation in Liberia. My sister was at the working at the National Port Authority. And then I initially declared conflict of interest because my sister was there. And as long as it had something, she had something to do with it, then I would exclude myself. Right. So I made that clear in writing. So that's what we call, but from the preliminary, it found out that she had nothing to do with it. So I was, then I was clear to continue my work. So that could be a conflict of interest. If I have my loved one, my wife, as a head of the institution, and I can audit that, I have to declare that. If I don't declare that and I'm removed from that audit, then it can be a problem. I can be subjected to penalties, or I can be subject to removal or harsher penalty. So we also have something called auditor's dilemma, where you're put in a situation where maybe you offer bribes or you offer things, and the dilemma is: do I refuse? Do I accept? Or you have a situation where it creates a dilemma for you. But at the end of the day, in auditing, the profession is such that these things have to be reported so that the proper action can be taken. If you don't report them, then you play into it. It becomes a problem later on. So yes, auditor can face conflict of interest. Auditors can face dilemma.
So Chyrl, let me come to you. Where your local liquor store, you have to audit it, and they know, and they find that you buying beer from there last week, or with sale taxes. At what point does it present a dilemma, a conflict of interest, and what's your experience?
Well, again, pretty much I'll piggyback off of what Alex said. A lot of times conflict of interest for us was if you knew someone in that institution. So based on your example, Dennis, if I just went to a liquor store and bought my Irish cream, I just went and bought it because they had a better price. Does it mean that I'm not going to audit them and come up with my findings? Absolutely not. Because again, I was a customer. I didn't get any deals that any other person wouldn't have gotten. So conflict of interest for us was if you had some relative working in that institution in high capacity, for instance, a director or whatever. So at that point in time, you had to remove yourself, declare that, no, I cannot do this audit. And you had to do that because if you were found later on by the government that you knew someone, it created the optics that it created was you may not have audited freely and you may not have audited fairly. And of course, your job was really important. So why would you want to jeopardize your job for a relative who's working with this company? So for us, that was pretty much what it was. It really had to do with if you had a family member working in that company in a very high capacity, then you had to declare that and remove yourself from that audit.
Okay. Thank you. Again, I want to welcome to my co-host, Mr. William Thomas Bernard King. We always like to mention that we have royalty in the house. That's the grandson, the great-grandson of President Charles D.B. King. William, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Dennis, and thank you for having me on the show. We were supposed to start on time. I had a house emergency, so I apologize profusely to all of our viewers. So yeah, we are here, and please continue, and I will catch up with you as we move along.
All right,
Dennis, let me add something here. Auditors' independence and conflict of interest and dilemma. No, I always say that the country like Liberia has some of the very good laws. The problem that we have is the human being. The human makes the system. But during the process of 2006, 2007, 2008, and even prior to that, good laws were put in place in Liberia. I mean, laws can change. Laws are subject to revision and things like that. But we have some good laws. One of the things, for example, the General Auditing Commission, for example, the FIU that I headed, when they talk about you have to be autonomous both as an institution that is gives you independence, and the head of the institution have to have legal independence. Now, that legal independence is enshrined in the act, the mandate of the institution. For example, why are people giving tenure? That in itself create autonomy. Once you have that tenure, 5 years tenure, 4 years tenure, it create, and there are certain organizations in Liberia, like the GSC, the FIU, we're giving that autonomy through the fact that the head had tenure. The institution, for example, in terms of its reporting structure, also creates autonomy. Another autonomy is financial autonomy. The entity, and these are things that are by international standards, and the entity should also have, quote unquote, sufficient financial resources to do its job, and its head must be paid properly so that the head cannot look around, scratching their head and looking for bribes and looking for deals and stuff like that. So these things are enshrined, even though in Liberia it was a little bit, for lack of a better way, it was a little bit abused and was extended to other entities that, in my view, should not have tenure and stuff like that. But it's there. So that provided that autonomy and that financial security. For example, some institutions are supposed to be giving their budgeted amount quarterly. That money should be sent to their account on a quarterly basis. They shouldn't be running beyond virtual those things create their account, and they are in law. But unfortunately, in practice, that's why I say we have good laws, but it's the implementation and the enforcement, and the people are the one that enforce that. So if the people are not up to doing that, then it's going to be a problem.
And you always have people. That's a thing. But that's a good segue to the dangers, or what are some of the dangers in this profession or in doing the job. We don't want we are not unaware of what has happened in Liberia, that people connected to auditing lost their lives in a span of few weeks. So let's come to the dangers, or what are some of the warning signs that things might go ugly in audits, or what are some of the dangers that you can see ahead, and what do you do in that instance where you feel that something is not going right or your life is in danger? What are some of the signs that you look for? What do you see and what do you do? Let me start with Chyrl.
Well, pretty much if you went to an audit and if the person you're dealing with, seem agitated, that's one of the red flags. If the person is not willing to give documents, that's another red flag. So if you have someone yelling and just being vocal, you have to use common sense and say, you know what, I don't feel safe here, and that will be time to leave, because you're better off leaving as opposed to sitting there and maybe getting into an argument that could lead to something physical. So those are some of the dangers. I mean, fortunately, most of the people I've worked with didn't really have that. Very few, on very rare occasions, that you had a situation going wrong, because again, in the US, we're authorities, and short of getting into a fist fight, most of the people will be very cooperative with the authority. So they will be cooperative in the sense that, yes, they will allow you to come. If they're not going to cooperate, they will just not give you documents and they will stonewall you. But if they allow you in, they will be very hospitable and very accommodating. So it's just very rare. I mean, I don't remember in the 20 something plus years that I worked that you had any auditor, for that matter, who had gotten hurt by any of the businesses. Again, I gave an example how I felt threatened because this man, this audit that I was doing, he really didn't understand what I was trying to get at him to say to him. And he got upset about it and he started to scream. So I just followed the procedure that we're taught. You feel threatened, pack up and leave. And which is pretty much what I did. So I was very fortunate. That was the only incident and nothing major happened. As it relates to Liberia and other countries, I really can speak to that. Perhaps Alex would be in a better position too.
And Alex, I'm coming to you for that better position. In Liberia, do we have a situation or have you experienced anything like that? And or what are some of the dangers? Let's say even you have completed your audit. Can you, on a cool Wednesday night, go and drink beer with that person or that entity? What are some of those things in Liberia? And if you actually face any issue like that you auditing someone, you see some dangers, or you have knowledge of other auditors' life being in danger because of what they're doing?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chyrl. I want to distinguish between audit as in audit, because I was one time an auditor and I still wear my auditing hat, but I also, let's distinguish that from Wreh criminal investigation, because I was also did some criminal investigation. So criminal investigation is a little, area that's it's just a little more hostile, because you're dealing with criminality. You're trying to take people to court. So, and when you conduct, whether it's financial criminality, whether it's corruption, whether it's on different criminal or drugs, different criminal situation, it's a little bit more risky than just the ordinary audit. So, but audit can also get riskier when it has to do with verification and going behind, especially when you have to do forensic audit, where now you're verifying things, you're assuming signatures and verifying signatures and going on inspection towards to see that people have done some of the things. So it can get hostile to that point. I have seen some of that, like, for example, we go on audit and people are threatening somebody, turn blind. But auditing itself it can be risky too, because there's this example where the guy wanted to do an inventory count of a tobacco company, and he fell off. He fell from wherever he was that was supporting him, and he fell in the tobacco and he burned. So, but human-to-human contact, like Chyrl said, one of the procedures for auditing is when you're doing the different steps of auditing, audit engagement, the engagement letter and stuff like that, which I don't want to go into details because it takes a lot of time. But there's something they call gain and understanding of the auditee, the person you're auditing, the leadership structure. Are they astute enough? For example, are they a member of the ruling party? What's the history behind the people that are heading this entity? What have been the past experiences of other auditors? In fact, to the extent that what is the general nature of governance in the country? Are they amenable to auditing? Likewise, because they say when you have astute leadership, the bottom-down, vision, top-down vision, bottom-up management. If you send the good message down, you'll get the good message flow back up. So if the environment is toxic, you expect that the auditors will be at risk, right? So it depends on the environment. So it's unfortunate that, for example, in Liberia, the latest event that some deaths were being attributed, these people have been attributed to or been seen as auditors, and they've died in a row. So that alone, for example, whether truth or that alone make auditors afraid. And some of the sense that we're getting that the auditors are actually afraid. because they don't know. So yes, so it depends on the environment and the things that have happened in the past.
Thank you, Alex. One of the things that you do bring up, and I think that in the case of Liberia, where it's a little bit of, I guess you can say, warning signs that I do see is like a slow, slippery slope over the past 5, 6, 7 years. So if I'm an auditor and I'm coming in and I see someone of your profession, your expertise, who then kind of step down, right? And then I also see a few folks from the different audits commissions, so those are some of the things that when I look at in the back of my mind, I have to ask myself the question, well, why, right? Whether I'm having some little sidebar or little small conversations with you, right? To kind of get a good idea, get a good vibe of the layout of the whole land. I think that's one warning sign. The other sign that I look at, which you touch on, was is the administration or at the government level, are they motivated to see things through, to see audits, to make the recommendations, the updates and so forth happen, or is it kind of a situation where it gets to the point where there's a disregard for the laws that's on the books? So those for me are some warning signs that if you get into that situation or into that space, you really have to be extra cautious with dealing with the layout of the land in Liberia. So thanks for sharing that information. I think it's going to be really helpful. Now we want to move to a little bit. Go ahead, Dennis.
If you don't mind, I want Alex to respond to that. That you are talking about the support you are getting from the government. The entire audit landscape. Would that present some danger? What's your experience? Is the government open to audit? And how are they protective of those who are involved?
Yeah. What are some of the tangible evidence that you say, yeah, they are open, or you know what, right now they're not there yet?
There are two things here. Okay. There are two things here. When I work for PricewaterhouseCoopers, it's a different ball game than when you work for government. So where they risk working for public accounting firm, yeah, there was risk. And I'll give you one example. But because the companies have shareholders, if they are publicly traded, they have all the different chains of report to make. So they cooperate with audit. Some of them can become hostile, like Chyrl said. They shout at you, they don't want to give you document, you got to go back and forth. I had those experiences. You got to go back and forth, you got to send memo, you got to write, you got to report them, So those things happen, but it depends on, in that case, it depends on the way you want to lead the old man to the grave. But so those things happen. I had an experience with, for example, I had some experiences. So it comes to mind in Sierra Leone. I was doing some work for the commercial banks in Sierra Leone. We were actually the work that we did caused the bank to close. And there was a public outcry. And these are the guys from wherever they come from. We flew out from different countries to Sierra Leone. And there was a complete outcry. And that was, we were being pitted at, we were responsible for what happened, the closure of the bank with the auditors. And we couldn't even go for lunch. We couldn't go to the restaurant because we were afraid that we may be harmed, because there was general outcry. People want their money. People was in the street. They want their money from the bank. They were at the bank doors. They want their money. And then auditors, consultant or whoever came from different countries to come and shut the bank down. Even though we're doing a total banking review of all the different banks from the Bank of Sierra Leone and all the different commercial banks. But that one bank closure posed a risk to us to the extent that we had to stay in our hotels and eat from our hotels and be guided under security control, under security safety. So that can be difficult. On the investigation side, I had my own personal experiences in Liberia, which I don't think is the subject of this show, which I should hold on to. But yes, with that experience, it tells me that, and given recent occurrences, in a government, like I said, it depends on the environment. In government auditing, we've heard stories in the past about GSC, different things that went on, different publications that we read with the auditors being harassed and auditors being troubled with the work. Again, I have a different perception about some of the things that happened, but it's not about my personal perception, it's about the risk that is, that befall on auditors. Yes, so you will note that auditors work in a right now. Like the fact that people who have been seen as auditors have passed away in the numbers create a problem. So it creates a problem and it creates a situation where auditors can feel afraid. Now, for example, we're hearing internal audit agency, we are hearing LRA. We are not hearing too much about the GSC anymore. So are they afraid to do audit? I don't know, but again, it depends on the environment.
Thank you very much. We're going to wait. Dennis is going to be joining us right now. He's just on muting. Thank you.
All right. We're going to be opening our phone lines very quickly so that others will join us. But we're going to go to, we saw that some call it the leaked audio report, and I hope my our technical folks in the back can put that on the screen later. But right now, you can be a part of the conversation by calling the number on the screen. It's also pinned on Facebook. Please call that and be part of the conversation. So let me start with Chyrl. Chyrl, we saw something came out because there's all, and we don't want to act like we don't know what's happening. I know because the news out there is people that lost their life in Liberia, the auditors and people related to auditing. They had an audit that they performed, and what came out, somebody didn't like it, and that's why they were hurt, they were harmed, and they were killed. But we have something that came up and said that's the audit report that they had. For us who have no idea, I've really never seen a physical audit report. Looking at that report, and later if we have time, we're going to put it up. I don't know what you can glean from it. Does it look legit? Is it something that an auditors will put out? What can you tell us if you saw that leaked or draft audit report?
Well, actually, Dennis, I really can't say much about it though, because I mean, in this day and age of technology, anyone could have put any documents together and say this is an audit report. I mean, short of looking at source document, doing this audit, I really cannot authenticate it. I mean, based on what it's saying, I'm just showing that there were discrepancies. But is this real? Is this true? I really can't authenticate it though. I have to look at the source document. I have to be a part of it, look at source document, and then say, yes, this is accurate, this is true. But I really can't. Unfortunately, as an auditor, I really can't. Another situation is I don't know what the process is of the Liberia Revenue Authority is. I have no knowledge of it. All of my auditing knowledge is working for government in the US. And to say from one government to the other, can I authenticate certain audits? Absolutely not. I can only authenticate audits within my sector of work that I did. So again, I really can authenticate this.
Right, but those things that are in that report, would it be something that auditors will find?
Well, absolutely. Auditors can find anything based on what this report is saying. They're talking about transfers of monies from one bank to the other. If I read this correctly, commercial banks, government commission commercial banks to collect tax on their behalf, and then monies are then transferred to the central bank to a particular account. So yeah, those are things that definitely could have happened looking at this. But again, I really can't authenticate it.
Yeah, that's fair. William, can you briefly summarize that audit report and let Alex in? He knows about Liberia. He knows how these things are done, and maybe he can help. But before we go, that Alex, William, if you can briefly summarize what we have in that audit report.
Yeah, with the very high level summary, what we have here is that pretty much there was an audit done by the LRA, and it looked back to 3 years, 2017, 2018, and 2019. And what they saw was that the taxes that were paid and that were collected by the commercial banks normally will be remitted to a LRA account. And the amount of monies that were remitted to that LRA account total roughly $25.1 million over the 3 years. That's the US dollar amount. And in the Liberian dollars, separately was $2.3 billion. So it's not 25.1 million converted into US dollars. It's two separate amounts, folks. And so what we have here is that when the amount was transferred to the LRA account, from that account, it normally then gets transferred into the Central Bank of Liberia holding account, which is another holding account. And what happened is there was discrepancy in that amount that was being transferred there. And so many words, they were asking, what is going on here? And why is it that there's a discrepancy between the amount that was flowing? And the discrepancy is around, like I mentioned, $25.1 million. And the report basically called the head of the LRA to pretty much give an explanation. Now, the report also mentioned Central Bank of Liberia. And as we see and as we read, Central Bank of Liberia was quickly, didn't want to get in the news again because of some past stuff. And so they basically let everyone know that no, they do not, under no circumstances, handle the LRA accounts, receivable, anything, and that if there are any issues, they should be taken up with the LRA and the finance ministry. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex, does it look like something that will come from our auditors in Liberia?
Okay, the first thing I want to do is to issue a disclaimer on behalf of Chyrl and myself. The report in question, or the internal memo in question that I pulled out from Front Page Africa when I was approached by Focus on Liberia to discuss this topic. I have it here. The subject is IAs, meaning Internal Audits Report on the Audit of Direct Transfer Payment at Commercial Bank. We cannot and are not ascertaining the truthfulness or the accuracy of this document. We are not saying that this document is authentic or whatsoever. We are not saying that. But for the purpose of the conversation, we discuss the paper in our hands, this alleged paper in our hands. So we have not talked to the LRA, the Liberia Revenue Authority, whether this document, but we pulled this document from Front Page Africa. Now, having said that, we discuss in general terms.
Okay.
I have a copy of this and we've looked at it. And what I would say is that revenue issue with regards to the topic at hand is by law. There is something they call the Public Financial Management Act of 2009. And that act has its regulations. The regulation is the big document that implements of 2009, and it was revised in 2012. Based on my understanding of that document, government had moved to single account, because back in the day, government money was all over in different countries, in Liberia, in different banks. So government decided to do a single treasury account. So government has this account called the general consolidated account, or the consolidated general revenue account. And that account is held at the central bank of Liberia. It's just like me having my money at John Brown Credit Union Bank. Okay, so the government of Liberia has an account called the General Consolidated Revenue Account by law. And the Ministry of Finance, the Minister of Finance, is the person authorized by the law, by the president, to operate that account. The same way I will have my money at Manjua Bank Incorporated, and I will operate it as the signatory or other signatories to the account. So see it in that view.
Yeah.
So the bank cannot dictate to me who I gave my money to, where I transfer my money, and stuff like that. But the law says that government will collect all its revenue into what we call a transitory account. That's by law. And that money will be swept and transferred to the government's central account, the Consolidated General Revenue Account.
And where should that transitory account be? With the commercial bank?
By a memorandum of understanding, revenue is collected at different places. So everybody cannot pull out to the central bank. And the central bank cannot be in every nook and corner of the country. So memorandum of understanding says monies can be paid into a transitory account at commercial banks. And this money should be transferred to the general revenue account. Okay? Periodically, it should be transferred there. Because the money does not belong in a transitory account. That's what transitory means pass through.
Yeah. We're
just using your bank to pass through the money. You collect the money from Grandjide, you collect the money from Butuo, you collect the money from there. Some people go to, you have a revenue window, even at the revenue authority at EAW Junction, where there are banks. You go to pay your passport money, the money, that $50, you pay it at a bank window. Okay, so LBDI is there, or Eco Bank is there, or this other bank is there. That's that window that collects that money into the transitory account. Okay? So once they collect that money, they will sweep that money, transfer that money into. Now,
Alex, before you go further.
Yes.
Is it required by law as to how long that money should stay in the transitory account?
When you say transitory, I mean the money should, as it enter into the account, should go.
Right, but is there a time limit on it? How long it should stay there?
I don't know whether it's a time limit, but it should be done immediately.
24 hours, 48 hours.
It should be done as it enter there, it should be swept away, because the money is just a pass through. It's just for it to get there, for you to be able to collect the money from all points, for it to get there, and the money can be transferred. But human action sometimes delay the process, but the money should be transferred immediately. Okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
So now, typically, when you transfer money to somebody or to another account, even your personal account, say transfer this money to this other account, the bank will take that action. So the other bank will issue what we call a confirmation. So in this case, when a commercial bank transfer the monies to the central bank is supposed to receive that money by issuing a receipt, which is called a confirmation, yes, that this money has been transferred. Okay. So what this report is saying, again, let me be careful here. So let me use the word purportedly saying is that the commercial banks collected a total of, in US data, United States data, over 25 million, exact figure 25,102,167.12. That's for the 3 years, 2017, 2018, 2019. They also collected Liberian dollars totaling $2.346 billion Liberian dollars. If you divide that by the rate, if I use a rate of say 170, that's $13.8 million. So you add all that, that's 38 million plus. So it's not just 25 million. So the various banks send this money. So the report is saying that by way of the confirmation statement that they received from the central bank, that the tally and what the central the commercial banks received is not equal. There's a discrepancy, there's a difference.
Yeah.
And as compared with the TAS, the tax administration system at the Liberia Revenue Authority, compared to what the commercial banks should have, it's not tallying with what the receipt. Now, these are discrepancy. And let's be fair, professionally, according to professional auditing or investigation, these are discrepancies. There is further work to be done if we will go by this report. Again, I'm being careful if we go by this report. These are, and I'm talking broad audit terms here. These are discrepancies, differences, or the audit in this paper they say irregularities, and I didn't know what work they did to come up with irregularities. But we will say, like Chyrl said, we'll carefully say these are discrepancies, and it happens. When auditors go on a field, they do what we call analytical review. They compare different accounts, different things. They compare different periods, they come up with differences. These differences should now be further audited. For example, they're supposed to now go maybe a further step with the central bank. And again, I read the central bank statement in the newspaper. If central bank made that statement, the central bank is right. If central bank made that statement, they're right, because it's like a commercial bank keeping your account. All you do by this account is, the secretary account is the Minister of Finance. So the Minister of Finance gave authority. Even when we were working with government, when I was working with government, when they send the salary list, we carry a check to the bill and say, oh, they issued the authorization here for us to start paying you. So the Minister of Finance have to issue the authorization. So the central bank does not. The central bank sort of manage the account and show that the account is safe from criminality and other things, as compared to where money laundering or anti-terrorism, those things they should. But as to where they should transfer the money, how they should receive the money, what money comes from the commercial bank, it's not their business. It's none of their business. So if that statement is coming from the central bank, then the central bank is right.
Yeah, and what is that? What does that statement say for the sake of our viewers?
The statement says exactly what I'm explaining here, that central bank literally is saying, according to that thing I read, I did not see a central bank memo. So I'm not saying that the central bank said that. But if the central bank said that, then the central bank is right. The central bank literally is saying that we're not responsible for what is held at the commercial bank. We manage this account, and we're not responsible for the day-to-day operation of this account. How money comes into it, how money goes out of it, no. Typically, the money goes there by the way of the memorandum of understanding. The central, all they do is they receive it and issue a receipt, which to the confirmation, and they keep a statement. So the auditors should go further down by seeking for that statement and ensuring that those figures are indeed, because it's possible that, one thing that is possible is that the confirmation may not be complete. The number of confirmation received may not be in totality, may not be all the confirmation that I received. Again, if this is true, I didn't do the audit, so I don't know. But I'm just saying professionally, it's also possible that they should have reviewed the bank statement. If they didn't, they reviewed the bank statement. And then if the bank statement is saying, oh, what the confirmation says agrees with what the bank statement is saying, then true, there's discrepancy. Then they're supposed to go back to a commercial bank now and ask where you receive this money. You did not transfer all. There's a discrepancy of almost, around $38 million here, equivalent of $38 million here. Where is that? It is also possible that some of that money may have gone somewhere else. It's possible, again, it's possible. Because it's possible that somebody might have acted outside of the memorandum. Understand that this money should go to the consolidated account and it went somewhere else. Maybe, okay, send 10% to this other account or send 20% to this other account or send this money directly to development projects. It's possible.
Right.
So
thank you.
It is not conclusive. If this report is true, then the auditors needed to, maybe if it is true, maybe there was a point in time reporting to the Commissioner General of the LRA that, oh, this is how far we reached, and we have these discrepancies, so we want to bring them to your knowledge. But we are still continuing the audit. It's possible that was the case. Again, if this report is true.
Thank you. We have a caller on the line. I will come back to you to tell me how we can check this, because let's say if what the audit report is saying is true or not true, this should be an easy thing to check. But hold that thought. Let me take a caller here. Caller Philip Doe. We have a caller on the line. Caller, your name and where you calling from?
Yes, my name is Philip Doe. I'm calling from the state of Minnesota.
Philip, go ahead.
I just want to thank Alex Cuffy and Chyrl Wreh for enlightening us on what auditing is about. And I would like to know from Mr. Cuffy if you were like an economic advisor to the government. You've worked in Liberia for a while, and what would you recommend to this government with respect to the recent incident about auditing and reports? What will you recommend to the government? You mentioned about that there are laws, but people are not following the laws. What will you say to this government to help bring trust among people, to Liberian citizenry, and also to young Liberian individuals that are going, considering auditing as a profession? What will you say to them? Because right now with the recent happenings in the country, a lot of people are having fears. What will you say to those young Liberian professionals coming in the field to alleviate their fears?
Thank you. Thank you, Philip. Alex, that's the question there from Philip. What will you advise the government? What will you advise young Liberians getting into the profession?
Well, let me say thanks to Philip for the good question. And thanks for promoting me to economic advisor. But the general advice to the country, it's in different segments. If I may answer your question, one of the things that I do, I would take it for myself as a person. When I'm head of an entity, from my experience, for example, when I heard anything, one of the things I want to do is to bring to the institution or whatever I'm part of the best people, the best and the brightest. I mean, best and brightest is relative. Some people are good in different things, some people are good in different things. So I balance it off by bringing in the best people. Once you bring in the best people, you are sure of succeeding, financially, economically, you're sure of succeeding. And you're also sure of making the progress that you want. And of course, again, as the head of the institution, the glory will come to you when there's glory, and the backlash and the whipping will come to you when things don't go too well. So because of that, when I was, say, for example, when I was head of the FIU, I made sure anti-money laundering situation and all that stuff was not think that was in the country, but it was a new phenomenon. But we picked some of the, to the extent that some of our partners that came, the U.S. Treasury and other, the World Bank, they kind of asked, where did you take these people from? I mean, they're well trained, and then you train them. You also train them, you lead them properly, you provide them with that leadership, doing, leading by action, leading by, and those things. So if I may translate that into an advice generally for the country, yes, dealing with some of the best and the brightest Liberians is the best thing to do. Now, the auditors, I know the situation that is happening in Liberia must scare auditors in Liberia. When I talk to some of my friends back home, they're afraid, especially people who are investigators and people who I work with personally, they're afraid. But I would tell you that when I did investigation in Liberia, for example, I knew some of the risks, but again, like my good friend told me, my friend, this is what you sign up for. And when you enter a profession where you sign up for, the other professions are good profession, and that is why I work in Ghana, I work in Sierra Leone, I work in Nigeria, I work, in the United States, and I can move anywhere and work because I have a professional career, which auditing gave me that foundation for me to be able to branch up in different things. So I would not discourage anybody for going into auditing. Auditing is a good foundation to build, especially when you get the right paper, the right degrees and the right certification and work with the right companies. You can be that's an enviable profession. So I wouldn't discourage anybody from going to it based on what is happening, what is best happening in Liberia.
So Chyrl, let me come to you, or you can respond to the question as well, or if you have anything to add on the question on the leaked audit report or in Liberia, anything you want to say?
Well, we pretty much have talked, especially Alex, I've talked in length about the leaked audit report, if this is actually true and accurate. Because again, we gave a disclaimer that we cannot authenticate this, we don't know, and we just speak to it generally. So there's not much more I can add, but as it relates to what Alex talked about, being an economic advisor, I think one of the things one of the advice or recommendation, like I would say, is not only getting the best and the brightest, but people with integrity. Okay, so again, you lead by example. Like he said, he gave a lot of his experience. So he brought people in and he trained them and he led by example and he made them the best. Now, as it relates to the auditing field, it's a noble profession. You matter. So don't get discouraged, whoever the auditors are, don't get discouraged with what is perceived, like we say, as happening in Liberia, because we don't know for a fact if those deaths are related to audit. We don't know. It's coincidental that you have auditors, but we're not certain what it is, and we can't speak to that. But the audit profession is very noble. Again, you can work anywhere. So audit is audit in Liberia. Accounting is accounting in Liberia, and you can transfer it to any other country. So don't get discouraged. And besides, you make a lot of money as well. So if you're looking to doing that, I would say welcome. Learn as much as you can, and you can work anywhere.
Thank you. Let's take one more caller. And Alex, I don't forget how we can check. Oh, the caller dropped. So Alex, before the call, I was asking, with everything that you've, explained about your perceived or purported audit report, how this should be easily, verified, right? Whether the money from the commercial bank reached all of, this discrepancy should be easily validated. And how can that be done so easily? I just think it should be like 2 seconds. We shouldn't still be wondering whether it's true or not.
Well, like I said, if the auditors did according to the paper that I have in front of me, if they did review the confirmation of the transfers, and now they are, because they are if there was no discrepancy, then that would have been okay. But because there are discrepancy, they should go a step further. And again, I assume that this may not be conclusive. There may be just internal memo to the, if this is true, is to the Commissioner General saying, okay, this is our work, this is where we stop. But they should go a step further by looking at the statements, the general consolidated accounts, revenue account statements. And then if that matches with the confirmation, then it's true that there are discrepancy. Now the next place to go is back to the commercial bank. Then they say, oh, but you collected all these monies, but you fell short of transferring 25 or 38 million. Is that figure, estimated 38 million. So then they ask the rightful question. In this case, if the commercial bank cannot answer those questions, then it's the commercial bank that should be held. And nothing to do with the central bank. Because the commercial bank that collects the money and wire the money to transfer the money to the central bank only manages what they receive. So if they collected 100 million, for example, and they transfer only 900,000, then the difference between the 100 million and 900,000, as long as it's fully verified that this is what central bank received, then where is the balance? Then the commercial banks are the ones supposed to answer that question in this case.
This is
William, you mind if I bring in a caller?
no, go ahead.
Okay, we have a caller from last 4 digits 0691. Your name and where you calling from?
My name is Arthur Wiado, and I am calling from the state of Maryland. Thank you,
you are live.
very
Let's
much.
Talk. Sure.
Let's talk. I just want to say thanks to Alex, Mr. Cuffy, and Chyrl, and most especially to FOL's economic team, my man William King, for this wonderful education about how things are going on about these audit reports. And then the fact that your two guests was very careful to explain this in a layman term. I think if many people watch your show today, they will take something from it. And what is going on in our country today is something that we more auditors. And auditing is not bad at all. It is to put things into perspective. And if we really respect our auditors and do what they recommend us to do, things will be okay for us. It should not be seen as the evil against anybody. So thank you, guys. You guys did extremely well. And I hope we will get these kind of for discussion on FOL and any other medium. And you guys will avail yourself to providing these information and clarification and education to us. So thank you so much, Mr. Da.
Thank you. Let's take our last caller for the evening. Mr. Kesali Dobo, you are live.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Ja.
Thank you.
And thanks to your studio guest. Before I go further, let me take this time to say thanks to my former instructor, Mr. Cuffy, who taught me at the UL. Thank you very much. In fact, for a matter of fact, he made me to start getting used to using my email because we receive almost all of our assignments and stuff through email. So I just want to say thanks to him very much for at least helping to impart knowledge to some of us.
Thank you, Mr. Coffey.
You know, when we heard that some of us who know who Mr. Coffey is, when we heard that he got appointed in this government, why it is true that we are strong critics of the government, but we thought and said within ourselves that with the likes of Mr. Coffey coming on board, This government actually learned business in helping to fight corruption. You know, I'm really not patronizing him. Like I said, I'm speaking from the point from which I know who Mr. Cuffy is. I don't know why he's done all of the other people, his interaction with other people. I'm speaking from my interaction with him, you know, as a former student. And, you know, some of us tell me also that, hey, this government is up for something. I think why they feel that they started initially on a bad footing, but bringing the likes of Mr. Cuffy on board, I think they're going to be getting somewhere. But unfortunately for us, when we started hearing things going the way it went, and when he left the government, it just threw us backwards to where we came from. So, Mr. Cuffy, my former instructor, I want you to please speak to us what are some of the differences with the government that led to your resignation. I came on a little bit late. Apparently, you might have explained it earlier. That led to you leaving the government. And as an auditor, do you actually think that this government is proceeding right when it comes to accountability, and is the country actually right footing financially? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Double. Even though that's a little bit away from our topic, but I'll let Mr. Cuffy decide what to do with it. Mr. Cuffy.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, thank you, Double. Thank you very much for the pat on the back. I appreciate that. That's what we get. That's the best thing we get as when we taught the University of Liberia, and then you go to the bank, your students see, oh, Mr. Cuffy, you know, let me process your class. I said, just sit down and give them the paper, you know, those kind of things. And then as you move around the world, you see your students, and they kind of, you know, tell you thank you for the service. Everybody may not be happy with you, but at least you get a little thank you on the back, pat on the back. You appreciate that. So thank you, Double, for that. Mr. Adado, you know, everything is not rosy, but Chyrl and myself here, we're professionals, and focus on Liberia. There's a particular program. It's a marketplace. It's for us to share experiences and not to inject our personal thing and situation on our situation. So we behave like professionals in every situation. We are soldiers, if I will always say it. We're soldiers in everything we do. Despite what we went through, this is what we for. So when we're given a platform to explain something, we take our personal feelings. If I would tell you that I'm not feeling bad, since these auditors died, and I'll tell you the truth right now, myself too, I've been traumatized. I've been going through my own trauma. But I can't bring my trauma to the program, to the show. I have to bring professionalism to the show. And that is what we sign up for. You know, when you're put in a situation, you provide the knowledge for which you were brought to provide, and forget about the personality stuff. So that's what we are doing here. But it doesn't mean that when people are dying that are in your profession, and quote unquote they're dying mysteriously, it doesn't impact you. Yes, to say the truth, whatever that led to their passing, whether it's peace be to their ashes. The two individuals, Peters and Peters and Yuswa, they're personal friends. Yuswa is a friend and brother, so I will not bring that passion to the program here. So, Mr. Kesley Double, again, I said it earlier that that whole investigation thing is not the topic here, so I wouldn't want to delve into it. And the reason why I left Liberia, I don't want to delve into it in this thing. But just to touch on a little bit on your last question about the way the government's proceeding. The topic here now is with auditing. So I will restrict my answer to auditing. Now, I said it earlier, for example, we have the General Auditing Commission. These days, we do not hear about the General Auditing Commission auditing. We have the LACC, the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission. We have the FIU. We have the Internal Audit Agency. Now we're having all these different audits. And then in the midst of all that, we're having deaths and all that stuff. It doesn't all go well. It doesn't give the government a good picture out there, however may it be. There's something we call reputational damage. It's bringing reputational damage to the country. Whether it's true or not, these people died a natural death or they died in a mysterious way. So my thing is, I would urge the government, using this platform to conduct an impartial investigation of these deaths, especially these 4 deaths, and bring, if they die mysteriously or if anything happened, they should bring, if there's a perpetrator, they should bring it to justice. But they should investigate properly to bring closure to this thing, to some or to the families, to we the friends, and then to the country, to bring, the image of the country into good, into good books. So my thing is, I will urge it, and then also for the citizens, the young folks that are hoping to go through this path. The auditing profession, as Chyrl and myself said earlier, is a good profession. It's a good starting ground. I started from auditing, from college straight to auditing. And I thank my stars that I went into auditing, and I especially worked with the #1 auditing firm in the world that has opened doors for me. So I will, encourage the government to put this thing to bed in the right place, so as not to discourage thousands of Liberians that are hoping to enter this professional sphere. That's all I can say to you, Kesely.
Thank you. Chyrl, let me go to you because we're about to conclude this, so we can conclude on the auditing process. We went through the definition, auditing, and then the post-audit. So say audit is done, we've audited, what else do we do? And we're going to use that to conclude tonight. So let's see, right after auditing, like going through the process, what next?
Okay, I'll speak again from my experience as an auditor in the US. Pretty much once the audit is concluded, what we did was we had what we call a post-audit report or post-audit conference before issuing the report. So the post-audit conference would then tell the taxpayer, pretty much, these are my findings. These are the discrepancies. And if you have any additional document to provide or these missing documents, I'll give you a certain amount of time to give me those documents. In the event that the documents are not given, then what we'll do is we'll have the audit closed out by issuing a report, send the case to billing and have it billed. Now, that's not the end of it though. When a taxpayer received a bill, he or she had a recourse, and that was to file a protesting the assessment. And that protest came to the other area that I worked in prior to my retirement. And that was when I said to William, he was like, what is a conferee? A conferee is, for lack of a better term, it's a hearings officer, an administrative hearings officer. So that was where I segued into being a sales tax specialty. Because as a hearings officer, we could not conference all of the taxes. So sales tax was my area of specialty. And that led me to focusing only on sales tax. So when the taxpayer came in with a protest, I reached out to the representative could be a lawyer, could be a CFO, and I established some kind of rapport, for lack of a better term, sent a letter, made a first initial attempt of telephone call, sent a letter, and then said, okay, we either had a telephone conference or we had an in-person conference. Those were the two kinds of conferences we had. Now, based on what they had in the protest, I would review it. This was like a separate eye. And my job, again, the fact that I work for government, some people could say, well, you could have been biased or there could be conflict of interest. No, it was separation of duties. Yes, I may have been friends with some of the auditors, but no, I had to review this with a separate eye based on the statute, which is the act, we'll say in Liberia, but the statute, the law, and based on the regulations. So I reviewed the documents. If the text, and I had three different results I could arrive at. If the auditor was wrong, I could vacate the entire assessment. If the taxpayer was wrong and didn't provide documents, I upheld the tax assessment. Or I could have what we call a hybrid. In other words, I could make adjustments to the assessment. And that was based on not only my knowledge as an auditor, but my knowledge of the law. And in doing so, I had the court cases to support decisions that I made. Now, in the event that I didn't have court cases in my state to support it, I went out to other jurisdiction, could be Maryland, could be Minnesota, and I will pull court cases that supported my decision, and I quoted those court cases. Now, even at that, the taxpayer still had another recourse. I could issue my conference determination, my conference report, but they still could go to tax court. And if they went to tax court, that my conference report served as a starting point for the Attorney General. So there were situations where I could have been pulled into tax court, and the judge would drill me through it and say, why did you do this or why did you do that? But for the most part, because my kind of work was really just based on the statute and regulations and court cases, the Attorney General had the starting point and they just ran with it.
Thank you. Well, that will bring to an end our show on auditing tonight. And so we'll take your final statements and we will conclude the broadcast. Mr. Cuffy.
Okay, so again, thank you, Focus on Liberia, for having us. And the auditing is a process, like we've been saying. Auditing has different steps. There are engagement procedures, there are appointment procedures, and then you also issue a letter of engagement, and then you review the customers, the client, whether it's government or private, to gain an understanding, an in-depth understanding. And then before you launch into the audit, you perform both the substantive side of things, that is, you're checking the numbers. You also, in the process, you also do some compliance work to ensure that the entity is complying with rules and regulations and its own internal policies and stuff. After that, all the thing is reviewed. The work is reviewed by different levels, from the supervisor level to the manager level to the head of the institution level. If it's a private auditing firm, it's at the partner level. And the report is issued. Now, in this process also, the person who is being audited has a role to play, in a way that their role is to provide an open space, to provide somewhere for the auditors to sit, and then to provide them with all the documentation that they need. If they don't provide the documentation, there's a problem. So during that audit process, it's done like that. And then the auditor concludes the work and then go and do what we call a draft report. That draft report is given to the entity, and the entity look at it, they do their responses of things that they're not satisfied with, and the auditor can conclude in the report, include in verbatim what the client said, the auditee said, and that report is finalized, submitted on the private entity side, submitted to the shareholders or to the board of directors, on the government side, like government Liberia, for example, is submitted to the president and the legislature. And then after that, there's in the private side of things, in the private company side of things, there's back and forth, continuous work is done, because some of the issues that I raise have to be cleared. Auditors have to make sure that those issues are satisfied. On the government side, of course, go through a long procedure that we explained the other time to the committee on audit work that review the work, that call people for hearing and stuff like that. And people are punished, or people are let off the hook depending on the findings from the audit committee of the legislature. So once again, audit is a good field. If you want to get into audit, you're welcome to get into it. Don't be deterred by the circumstances in Liberia, the temporary circumstances in Liberia. Don't be deterred. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex, and thank you very much, Chyrl. We very much appreciate it. To our listeners and viewers, this is our audit series. This is 2 of 3, so I believe we will be back, right, Dennis? I'm sure we will be for part 3 of this audit series. Trust me, guys, I know, but there's still more that we want to cover with this audit series. Ladies and gentlemen, please do not take this lightly. Audits are a very important profession. It's very important. It's very critical. And what I will do is I will leave you with just a little small tidbit of the power of influence. And I will summarize that in 1 minute, Dennis, and then from there, we're going to go to our song. In the beautiful, wonderful state of California, there's a homeless crisis of over 150,000 people. And also the Californians have issued bonds and so forth to help with the homeless crisis and affordable housing. To that tone, they're wondering, why are there still more homeless people? What is going on? And so this situation, or this question, went to the California Audit Department, and there was a report that was done by Eileen M. Howell, who's the chief auditor for California. And what they discovered was that there's a lot of basically 4 agencies handling this stuff, and there's so many hurdles, there's so many different dates and all these different issues that makes it hard for developers who want to provide affordable housing for them to do business. And so based on that report, we can see that there's going to be a lot of good work that will be done to address those concerns so that more people can find housing. And ladies and gentlemen, that's just one little example of how an auditor can come and look at the processes and make recommendations so to make the lives of his citizens better. With that being said, next week we'll continue with this, looking more Liberia. We're going to also look to see if there's more report that's going to come out about this whole audit news that came out. It's very scary. I tell you that with these numbers, and so hopefully we can get more. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Focus on Liberia Marketplace. We want to thank you, and we ask that you tune in. Tomorrow we have a wonderful program. And with that being said, I am going to leave you with our song. We are all Liberians, because we seek to Focus on Liberia, seeks to educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. Anthony, please take us home with our song. Thank you very much.
We are Liberia. Liberia is our home. Liberia people. Liberia.